On a black, rain-lashed night on Okinawa in May of 1945, the sound that broke the tension wasn't a scream, a gunshot, or an explosion. It was laughter. Hysterical, uncontrollable laughter erupting from a young American GI crouched in his flooded foxhole. To the Japanese infiltration team silently closing in, this was not the sound of an enemy breaking. It was something far more unsettling. It made no tactical sense. In the economy of night combat, where sound is intelligence and fear is a tangible weapon, this bizarre outburst would create a ripple effect of confusion that turned the tide of a silent, deadly encounter. This is the true story of the Battle of Okinawa's Invisible War, the documented reality of combat stress, and the moment a psychological breaking point became an accidental and devastating weapon. To comprehend the sheer pressure of that moment, you must first grasp the hellscape that was Okinawa. Codenamed Operation Iceberg, the invasion began on April 1, 1945. It was the final, bloodiest campaign of the Pacific War, a brutal 82-day slugging match between American forces and a Japanese army dug into the very rock of the island, sworn to fight to the last man. For the United States, Okinawa was the essential stepping stone, an airbase and staging ground for the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands. For Japan, it was the last defensive line. The casualty figures are almost incomprehensible. Over 12,500 Americans killed, 38,000 wounded. Japanese military losses exceeded 110,000. The battle was fought in a quagmire of knee-deep mud, under torrential rains and amidst a perpetual stench of decay. It was a battle of attrition in its purest, most grinding form. But beyond the statistics of steel and high explosives, Okinawa was a profound psychological trial. The unrelenting artillery barrages, the constant threat of hidden snipers, and the dread of the night created an atmosphere of sustained, corrosive terror. When darkness fell, the rules of war changed completely. As the American lines solidified into a network of foxholes, machine gun nests, and listening posts along positions like the Shuri Line, the Japanese adapted. Outgunned in daylight, they mastered the night. Official U.S. military histories, such as the volume Okinawa: The Last Battle, in the Hyperwar Archive, detailed this shift explicitly. Small teams of 3 to 5 infiltrators would slip through the American lines under cover of darkness. Their objectives were designed to shatter nerves as much as destroy men. To silently eliminate sentries, lob grenades into command posts, cut communication wires, and seed supply routes with mines. They moved with ghostly silence, often barefoot, using every ravine and shadow. For the American riflemen, this meant that night was not for rest. It was a heightened state of paralyzing alertness. Your eyes lied to you in the dark. Your ears became your primary sensor, straining to separate the rustle of the wind from the scrape of the knee on gravel. Sleep was a deadly gamble. This was the night war, a conflict fought in inches and decibels where uncertainty was the enemy's greatest ally. And into this volatile arena marched another invisible foe: combat stress. By 1945, the U.S. military was painfully familiar with what they termed combat fatigue or war neurosis. As later studies by institutions like RAND would articulate, this was not a failure of courage. It was the human nervous system pushed beyond its design limits by sustained terror, exhaustion, and horror. Symptoms ranged from the 1,000-yard stare and uncontrollable tremors to mutism and, in documented cases, inappropriate emotional outbursts, including sudden hysterical laughter. On Okinawa, every man had a breaking point. The stage was now set. Exhausted defenders, invisible hunters, and the fragile human mind at the breaking point. What happened next was a collision of these forces that no training manual could ever anticipate. Picture a specific sector of the line, perhaps held by a weary company from the 7th Infantry Division, in the latter half of May. The day has been yet another costly, frustrating push against a labyrinth of caves and fortified positions. As dusk gives way to a moonless, rainy night, a cold drizzle soaks the men to the bone. In their foxholes, they are shivering, strung out on caffeine, adrenaline, and sheer will. They know the drill: absolute noise discipline. Do not cough loudly. Whisper. Do not strike a match. Listen, just listen. 100 yards out, a 4-man Japanese infiltration team is on the move. They are experts at this deadly game. They navigate by memory and subtle sound, slipping between American strongpoints, their goal to penetrate deep and sow chaos from within. They can make out the dark humps of foxholes against the slightly less black sky. They can hear the occasional muffled cough, the soft clink of metal on metal. Everything is proceeding according to the silent script of a night probe. Back in the American line, one soldier, a private first class from the Midwest, has reached his limit. The tremors he's been fighting for days won't stop. The memory of his friend's fate earlier that afternoon loops endlessly in his mind. The cold has locked into his joints. He is, by any clinical measure, experiencing an acute combat stress reaction. His grip on the present is unraveling. And then, in the thick, waiting silence, a sound tears through the darkness. It starts as a choked gasp, then a snort. Then it bursts forth, a loud, ragged, uncontrollable peal of laughter. It is not a sound of mirth. It is the raw, discordant sound of a psyche short-circuiting. From the next foxhole, his squad leader's hissed command cuts through the rain. "Miller, shut your mouth!" Now, but he cannot. The laughter continues, a bizarre human siren in the deadly quiet. Across the short stretch of no man's land, the Japanese infiltrators freeze. Their entire tactic relies on stealth, surprise, and exploiting the defender's fear and inattention. This sound is an anomaly that their tactical doctrine cannot process. Why is an American laughing? Is it a signal to an unseen ambush? Is it a display of such insane confidence that they are walking into a trap? In the zero-sum logic of the night, where every scrap of information is vital, this one piece of data, this irrational laughter, introduces crippling doubt. Their advantage of certainty evaporates. They hesitate. And in the close-quarters darkness of a night infiltration, hesitation is a death sentence. Let's reconstruct the next 2 minutes through the eyes of those who lived it. For the laughing soldier, Private Miller, the world has collapsed into the physical spasm of his own body. He is a prisoner of his shattered nerves, barely aware of the danger his outburst has created. For his comrades in the surrounding holes, panic and anger duel. That laughter is a beacon, marking their position for death. They clutch their rifles, frantically scanning the impenetrable black, expecting a grenade or a swarm of enemy soldiers to materialize at any second. "For God's sake, make him stop," someone whispers harshly. Discipline, their only shield, is cracking. For the Japanese team leader, crouched in a shell crater 50 yards out, this is a profound tactical crisis. His training offers no solution for an enemy who laughs in the face of a night attack. He signals his men to hold. They listen. The laughter is broken, hysterical, unnatural. In their intelligence briefings, Americans fear the night. This does not sound like fear. It sounds like madness, or worse, like the bait for a devastating trap. Is this a ruse to draw them into a pre-sighted killing zone? Has their approach been detected all along, and is this some twisted American psychological operation? He must make a snap decision, abort the mission, or charge into an unpredictable situation. This moment of paralysis is critical. Meanwhile, in a dugout command post a few hundred yards behind the line, a lieutenant grabs a field telephone. "Sir, we have a situation on the perimeter. A man is having a breakdown, making significant noise. The position is compromised. Request immediate illumination over Sector Baker 7. The command decision is instantaneous. If stealth is lost, replace it with overwhelming light and fire." Back at the foxhole, the sergeant has reached Miller. He doesn't yell. He grabs the shaking soldier, pins him down, and speaks directly into his ear, his voice low and steady. "John, listen to me. Breathe. Just breathe. It's over. You're okay." The physical contact and the calm tone begin to pierce the hysterical fog. The laughter subsides into choked, ragged sobs. But the chain reaction is already in motion. The Japanese team leader, still weighing his options, sees a sudden blinding star arc into the sky from the American rear. A parachute flare ignites, casting a harsh, magnesium-white light over the entire landscape. The night is ripped away. His team is caught in the open, silhouetted against the mud. The game is over. He barks a sharp order to retreat. At that exact instant, every American machine gun, rifle, and BAR on that section of the line opens fire. The previously silent night erupts into a storm of muzzle flashes and streaking red tracers, searching for the fleeing shadows. The infiltration is shattered, not by a pre-planned counter-ambush, but by a cascade of events triggered by one man's psychological collapse. The climax was not heroic. It was human, chaotic, and it exploited the fundamental vulnerability of night combat, the enemy's desperate need to interpret the unknown. They expected to hear fear. They heard something that sounded like its terrifying opposite. That dissonance bought the precious seconds that saved the line. In the cold, gray light of dawn, the sector took stock. The line had held. A few scattered grenades had been thrown, but the main infiltration effort had been decisively broken. For the men, it was a victory that felt strange and hollow. The immediate priority was Private Miller. Gently extracted from his hole by his sergeant and a medic, he was shaking violently, his eyes vacant and distant. He was tagged with a diagnosis of severe combat fatigue and evacuated to a battalion aid station. Here, the U.S. Army's forward psychiatry system, built on the principles of PI-E, proximity, immediacy, expectancy, took over. The goal was to treat the soldier close to the front, provide rest, food, and a brief respite from the sensory hell, with the expectation he could return to duty. For some, this worked. For others, like Miller likely was, the wounds were deeper, and he was shipped further rearward, out of the war. There was no medal issued for the events of that night. No citation for causing enemy confusion via nervous laughter. The official after-action report would tersely state, minor infiltration attempt repelled in Sector Baker 7. Illumination effective. The human truth was buried in bureaucracy, but in the rumble of the foxholes, the story lived on. You hear what happened to Miller? Cracked up last night. Started laughing like a madman. Crazy thing is, I think it scared the hell out of the Japs. It became a piece of grim company folklore, a stark testament to a brutal reality. On Okinawa, the mind was a battlefield just as consequential as the terrain. The Battle of Okinawa ended on June 22, 1945. Its staggering cost provided the final grim calculus that led to the use of the atomic bomb. Its tactical lessons were immense, leading directly to improved U.S. night fighting doctrine, equipment, and a renewed focus on owning the darkness. But the deeper legacy of Okinawa, and of incidents like the Laughing Soldier, is the indelible lesson about the human dimension of total war. Okinawa was a colossal experiment in sustained combat stress. The story of that night, whether it occurred precisely as reconstructed or in 100 similar variations, underscores a fundamental truth. War is not merely a contest of weapons, but a contest of perceptions, nerves, and the limits of human endurance. Today, we understand these wounds as post-traumatic stress disorder. In 1945, they called it combat fatigue. The label changes, the damage does not. The official history on hyperwar details movements and casualties, but between its lines runs the constant thread of immense psychological strain. This story forces us to look past the strategy maps and consider the individual. A young man, alone in the dark with his terror, whose breaking point manifested in a sound so incongruous it altered the tactical reality around him. So, what truly happened on that Okinawa night? Did a soldier's stress-induced laughter genuinely disrupt a Japanese attack? We lack the enemy's after-action report for confirmation, but the immutable logic of night combat argues yes. In an environment where stealth and surprise are everything, the introduction of a profoundly irrational, unexpected variable, where there should be tense silence, can be as disruptive as a machine gun burst. This is not a story of classic heroism. It is a darker, more complex tale of the breaking point, and how in the chaotic ecosystem of war, even a breakdown can have unintended decisive consequences. It frames the Battle of Okinawa not just as a clash of armies, but as a grinding war of attrition against mud, steel, and the human spirit itself. What do you believe? In the shadowy realm of night combat, which is more powerful, the physical weapon in your hands, or the psychological weapon of unpredictability and fear in the mind of your enemy? Share your perspective in the comments below. If you want more stories from the edge of history, tales that explore the forgotten human fractures of the Second World War, subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. Next time, we journey to the freezing waters of the North Atlantic, to the bridge of a lone, outgunned Allied destroyer that turned itself into a battering ram to save an entire convoy. I'll see you there.